Good evening and welcome. My name is Victoria Di Francesco Soto, and I am the Dean of the Clinton School of Public Service. This fall marks 20 years since former presidents Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Jimmy Carter, and George H.W. Bush stood on a rainy stage in downtown Little Rock to dedicate the Clinton Presidential Center. And I've been told the weather was like the weather of this week. So that moment was the culmination of years of hard work, which we are here today to recognize, learn from, and celebrate. In the 2 decades since opening, the Clinton Center, which includes the William J. Clinton Presidential Library and Museum, where we are right now, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton School of Public Service, Cafe 42, and the Rock Island Railroad Bridge, has become a fixture of downtown Little Rock, the state of Arkansas, and the presidential history of this country. The Clinton Center was a major catalyst in re-engineering Little Rock's downtown and established the city as a tourism destination for people across the world. The physical embodiment of Clinton's idea of building a bridge to the 21st century, the Clinton Center has welcomed more than 5 million people to explore President Clinton's legacy, participate in dynamic educational programming, and experience its diverse array of lectures and guests. Today's panel welcomes back the local leaders who were instrumental in bringing this incredible asset to Little Rock. We would like to recognize the founding staff and volunteers who worked at the Clinton Center from the very beginning, including those from the Clinton Presidential Library, the Clinton Foundation, and the Clinton School of Public Service. And a final note of recognition to the pioneers who are not able to be with us here tonight, such as founding Dean Senator David Pryor and Dean John DePippa, and a heartfelt thanks to those who have gone before us. Dr. Tom Bruce and Dr. Alan Sugg, president of the University of Arkansas System, and countless others whose vision contributed to us being here tonight. For tonight, we have a star-studded lineup. We have Dr. Dean Campiris, Little Rock City Director, and also I'm going to throw in there that he is also on the board of the Clinton School of Public Service. Skip Rutherford, the former dean, my predecessor at the Clinton School of Public Service. Debbie Schock, Senior Director of Operations and Chief of Staff for the Clinton Foundation. Stephanie Street, Executive Director of the Clinton Foundation, and our moderator, Lena Hayes, former Deputy Executive Director of the Clinton Foundation. Lena presently is the Chief Development Officer for the Baptist Health Foundation and previously worked at the Clinton Foundation for 15 years. First as a volunteer for Visitor Services, and then as a Deputy Executive Director. Please join me in welcoming our incredible panel tonight.
Hello. How's everybody doing tonight? It stopped raining. Are you excited? First of all, thank you so much, Vicki. Did y'all see High Profile? Did everybody see that this past Sunday? Or Vicki, were you in High Profile? I thought you were not?
She was a while back, but yeah.
Was that January 2022?
I think it's the food thing.
Well, it was good. I read it today. You had a big legacy to follow, actually, and you know that. One is up here with us on the panel, but I want to say that we're so excited to have you here. You're leading with passion and impact, and you're going to leave a legacy, a lasting legacy of your own. So thank you so much, y'all. We were looking at a rock star there. So I'm up here with a lot of people who are going to leave a lasting legacy as well. And y'all were up here because you were instrumental in the location and the building of the Clinton Presidential Center here in Little Rock. And
So were you, Lita, just FYI.
Well, I was, and I'll go ahead and just talk about that real quickly, as y'all will in a few minutes. I was involved as Director of Volunteers, as she has shared with you, and my legacy really is the volunteers who were involved. And so, do we have any volunteers, founding volunteers, existing volunteers here tonight? If you do, would you stand, please? Stand. Yes. Because this building, as beautiful as it is, you are the reason it comes to life. You make it warm, you make it loving, and thank you for all you did and all you continue to do at the Clinton Center. So if each one of you will share, please, your role in helping create the Clinton Presidential Center. And we'll start with you, Dean.
Well, I had a long role in this. And when President Clinton was elected, there was a group that Maurice Mitchell called together, and I've got the print of the booklet. There's a $60,000 booklet that we're trying to find right now that talks about bringing the Presidential Library here. So he was 1 year into his term when it was finished and sent to the President Clinton by Mac McClarty. He was the conduit we all used. And I told Mary, my wife, that I was in my early 40s at that time, and it seems like I've never gotten away from working here. And it's been a wonderful trip, and I love everything about it and what we've done and all the people that I've been involved with. So,
thank you, Stephanie.
Well, I was lucky enough, I was working in the White House and didn't really become aware of all that was happening here in Little Rock until sort of halfway through the second term. And at that time, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do after the White House, and knew that I was never really planned to stay in Washington after those 8 years. I always knew I wanted to come home and come back to Arkansas, and was planning on getting married, and my husband wanted to come back to Arkansas. And so having expressed that to Bruce Lindsay, who I know is watching us on the screen. Hi, Bruce. You were involved in this too, and I'm going to talk about your role. And President Clinton and Skip convinced me that this would be a way to continue promoting the work of the Clintons, which I am very passionate about, and doing that through building this center and working for the foundation. And so that's how I stayed connected. And 33 years later, I'm still here until they kick me out.
Thank goodness.
Thanks, Lena. Thanks for being part of this. On election night 1992, on the streets of downtown Little Rock, I was standing there watching all the festivities at the old State House, and I felt a tap on my shoulder, and it was Herschel Friday, who said, "Now we got to start thinking about the Presidential Library." I thought, Mr. Friday, have they counted all the votes yet? But I give him credit. He was part of this group with Maurice Mitchell that really led that effort. In 1995, in January of 1995, the late Mark Middleton wrote a memorandum to President Clinton, to Secretary Clinton, then First Lady Clinton, and to Matt McClarty, outlining an overview of how you do a presidential library project. That memorandum was very important at the time, but it didn't get much play because everybody thought, we can't start talking about a presidential library in 1995. We got to run for re-election in 1996, so we don't want to let people think we're headed for our legacy when we have a second term. But in 1997, when President Clinton asked me to head up the library project, I did. And for 8 years, it was a labor of love most days.
And I came when we had the site selected to help with the construction and the design, and I didn't even know where Little Rock, Arkansas was. Because I was in Denver, I was at the DIA airport, happy, and now this is my home, and I love it. So I came later on in the picture, but you'll hear more about my story.
Thank goodness she stayed.
Right. So speaking of legacies, if he were still living today, for sure he would be on this stage with you all. And I want to recognize someone out in the audience, Siobhan, who was his current fiance. And I'm going to tell a story, that's why I'm recognizing you. So, but Siobhan, thank you for being here. I know it's been a challenge for you. But he would definitely be up on the stage because he was very instrumental in being here. He was the assistant Little Rock City manager. And then he asked this lady named Lena Womack to marry him. And after that decision, Dean and all of the board all of a sudden knew he would be perfect because he made good decisions. He would be perfect to be the city manager. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I'm just telling history. It was about how it all began, right? So anyway, he continued to serve as city manager for almost 25 years. And he was the staff project lead for the city in the development of the Clinton Presidential Center and Park. And if you haven't figured out who I'm talking about yet, we have a clip that we want to share with you so you can see.
This is really one of my favorite vantage points of this city. As I look out and you see new hotels and new condominium projects and new private business enterprises that have happened in our city since the announcement of the Presidential Library, I would say without a doubt, these projects and the redevelopment that we've had in our core downtown would not have happened if the Clinton Presidential Center was not located right here in the heart of our city.
So Bruce Moore. Yes. And I know he's looking down on us, so I must acknowledge that he would also say, Stephanie, that he is the reason. He takes full responsibility for you hiring me and giving me an opportunity to work for the Clinton Presidential Center. So thank you, Bruce. I want to give each one of you a minute to share your reflections on Bruce. And Dean, would you like to start?
I need more than a minute.
Okay. I'm going to go to Debbie. Would you like to start?
Sure. I can tell you that Bruce and I worked hand in hand. Being a city park, I needed a contact because when things go wrong, we have to fix them immediately. And Bruce was the person I could call all hours of the day or night. And he was a problem solver. And he would get the problem solved and we would go on to the next day. So working with Bruce was like my key to the city because he made things happen. And he helped me keep this center running, the park gorgeous, and I couldn't have done it without Bruce's support.
Thank you for that. Skip.
Well, if it weren't for Luke Moore's daddy, we would not be here tonight. His role in this project was absolutely critical. Not only did he have the confidence of Mayor Jim Daley and the confidence of the Little Rock City Board, but he had the confidence of the whole Clinton Presidential Library team. And one of the things that I learned in these developing years of this project was that what Dean Compuris and Vice Mayor Michael Keck already knew, that when there was a problem, and by the way, while he was doing the Clinton Library, he was also doing the city as well. But when there was a problem that you faced, there were two words: call Bruce.
That's great. Stephanie.
I get a little emotional when we talk
Yeah.
about Bruce Moore.
Yeah.
Bruce was one of the very first people that I got to know after coming back here from working in the administration. And I can't imagine, I know that this place would not be here today in sort of its full complement and doing what we're doing if it wasn't for Bruce's contribution. I think, Debbie, you really said it best. I mean, Bruce was, he was a problem solver. He was a full partner. He was all in. The other thing about Bruce is he always made everybody else look good. Bruce never sought the limelight. Bruce was the person that was pulling the levers, making things happen, and he would always give somebody else the credit for it. As Debbie said, you could call Bruce 2 a.m., whatever time of day. If you wanted something, a problem solved or a crisis averted, Bruce, up until the day he died, was that person. So I miss him dearly. Bruce is irreplaceable. His spirit lives on here and through his precious son and through Siobhan. And I just feel lucky to have been able to call him friend.
Thank you.
Well, I too get a little emotional about this. You know, if you talk about what Michael Keck and I did and the other city board members, when Bruce started as city manager, we came down to 2 candidates, and I can't remember where the lady was from that we had to decide between. And a number of us on the board understood his potential and understood what he could do and understood his devotion and his selflessness and his ability to get things done. And, you know, he could have been the mayor of the city or a representative over and over and over again, but he never wanted to be the guy that was out front. He wanted to be the person to get things done. And as far as this project's concerned, we were, and we'll get to this, when the president decided to put the library here, he didn't say, I'm putting it here. He said, I'm going to put it in Central Arkansas. And he said, we want people to put submissions in on where to put the library. And Bruce and I and Tony Bazinski, who was our driver at that time, we drove all over this area looking at sites and evaluating them and seeing what was going on and brought them back to Skip. And we finally got down to this site. But it was an extraordinarily fun opportunity. And it was a great product that we produced, but it wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for Bruce. But it also wouldn't have happened if the city board had not been behind this project 100% every day. We had, I don't know how many votes, but many votes that we had. And one vote, we didn't have unanimous decision on what to do, and that was whether to name all of Markham, Clinton Avenue, or just half of it. But every other thing, every board member, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or you like Bill Clinton or not, everybody understood the value of this, and that was in a large part to Bruce helping saying, we need to get this done.
So, Dean, you've kind of gone into it a little bit. Y'all were a part of the first conversations, you, Dean, you, Stephanie, Skip. Tell us about the birth, you know, what actions took place, how you played a part in it, and tell us about.
In the selection of this?
Yes.
Well, it was multifactorial, and when the president and Mrs. Clinton decided to come and look at these sites, we got down finally. First of all, we got down to 6 sites, and Skip brought down the people from the federal government to look at the sites. And they came down and they scrutinized every site, and one of the sites where his Episcopal school is right now, and they got out of the car and they got back in the car, and I said, what's going on? And they said, you can't do it here. You got an active train behind it, and you've got big high wire tension wires behind it. Can't do that. So we got in the car. Bill Bowen desperately lobbied the president to put it at the law school. And they took one look at that and they said, can't do that. And I said, why? And they said, because the exit ramp onto 9th Street is too short to be able to queue up cars to do that. And so it finally came down to 2 sites. And I was telling Ben that we were, Skip and I, in the presidential limousine, we came right down here to the book depository, which they didn't know that was a book depository. And it had a ramp going up to it. And our idea was that we would drive the car up there and we would show them this vast wilderness of wasteland and terrible looking areas to put the library there. And the driver wisely said, I'm not driving this heavy car up there because the building was going to fall out. And we walked up and they hadn't undone the fence, the barbed wire fence. And it had an addition on the side so you couldn't go around it. So you had the president and his wife holding onto a pole, swinging around this to this flat roof and saying, and we're sitting up there, Skip and I are saying, this is where we want you to put your library. This is a great site. It was a wasteland of dilapidated buildings in kudzu. And, you know, they said, okay.
That's great. Stephanie, tell us what was happening at the White House.
Well, there were a lot of other conversations happening back in the White House with ferocious lobbying from friends and colleagues trying to lobby that it would be much easier to raise the money for something like this. It was going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And there are places like Georgetown that would be happy and thrilled to put up the money for something like this. There was a site on the Anacostia River, which our dear friend Terry McAuliffe and others were lobbying that they could help raise the money there. There were sites out in California, Fayetteville, obviously, where both of the Clintons both taught law school, was lobbying hard for this. So there were lots of tense conversations going on, but I know in the president's heart, he knew exactly, he knew that he wanted to have the library located here. And he's even said so much, several different occasions. He said, number one, he would have never been president without the support of the people of Arkansas. And he knew that this would be a catalyst, not just a place where people could come and be inspired and learn about the history of our country in the 1990s, but a place where people could come together. And it would be a place where economic development, cultural development, social development, and he felt like that was a gift that he wanted to give to the people of Arkansas. And so I feel like deep down he never wavered, even though the people were trying to like talk him out of it. He knew.
I wish he'd told us.
I know, but he. And on that, the other point is why Arkansas, and then you all can talk more about why this site. He also knew as a kid growing up in sort of a place where you didn't have a lot of opportunities to get out and see the rest of the world and the people he grew up around. He knew what it would mean for kids from rural Arkansas, for folks who had never had the opportunity to leave their city or the state, to come to a place like this and be inspired to see that they could do big things with their life like he did with his. And so I think he knew deep down for those reasons that it was always going to be here. I think you guys probably have a better sense of what finally got him to choose this site. But my gut told me, just listening to him talk in those meetings when everybody was trying to pull at him, that it was going to be in Little Rock.
And Skip, do you want to talk about the establishment of the Clinton Foundation?
Yeah, I would say that, and I'll get to that because we formed that for the purpose of raising money to build this facility. But Fayetteville put up a very strong bid, and I give them a lot of credit. I just would tell you, having been a part of that process, I was impressed with what Fayetteville presented. People like Dan Ferreter and people like Diane Blair and others really put forth a major, strong effort. But when Little Rock was finalized, when that decision was made, one of the big drawing cards of this site was the river, and it was the river, and I must say that I can't let this go by because my dear friend Bev Lyons is out here in the audience tonight. One of the attractive things of this river are the bridges that this city has, and that thanks in large part to the late Buddy Lyons saved and restored. And yeah, But those were big drawing features for us in finalizing this site. Lena, the Clinton Presidential Foundation was formed in 1997.
Will you say that again? Because a lot of people think that it was established in 2001 when President Clinton left office, and that's not true. So thank you, Skip.
And I want to say this to my friend Bruce Lindsay, who is watching. Bruce, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation was formed in 19... I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's other folks.
Yeah, I know. It was formed because we needed an entity to raise money. And so the first money that came to this library, or the Presidential Foundation staff, came from the Presidential Inauguration Committee from 1996. It was somewhere between $2 and $3 million that went into the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, and we were able in 1998, after the foundation in 1997, to start doing the administrative stuff that we had to do. You know, all the detail, the paperwork, setting up the fundraising apparatus and all that. We could, in all 50 states, it took a while, but that's when the Presidential Foundation was formed.
Thank you.
And so, do you want to go, Debbie? Do you want to add some more to that, or do we want to talk?
I wasn't here yet.
Lena, I want to say one thing, though, about that early time. There are a lot of people here in this room that perhaps didn't have a formal role, if you will, serving on a specific committee or, with the actual site selection. But the Arkansas Travelers, people like Sheila Brofman.
Yes.
Sheila, I think, are you here somewhere?
She's there.
There's
Okay.
Sheila. Without the Arkansas Travelers and what Sheila did and the two campaigns, we wouldn't be building a presidential library. President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, for all her campaigns, what a huge contribution the Arkansas Travelers made and continue to make, and many of them served as our founding volunteers. So I just wanted to recognize Sheila and thank her for her ongoing efforts and dedication to helping us here at the Clinton Center. She's a real champion, and Sheila, we appreciate you and the Arkansas Travelers so much.
Thank you. So I think we talked a little bit and enough about the selection, unless somebody else wants to share some unique stories, some things that people may have not heard that we want to laugh about. If not, we'll move on.
Let's move on. I'm looking at you, Skip. And Jordan Johnson back there. Well, Jordan Johnson was about, 18 or 19 when you used to drag him up to the White House and we'd have these meetings?
He was 11.
11, okay.
So we're in this beautiful building. We know that the world-renowned architecture firm, Polshek Partnership, and the exhibitions were designed by Ralph Appelbaum Associates. So Debbie, something you were here for was to help with that process, and I know it took a lot of work in the design of the exhibits and so forth. So do you want to share some of that? And I know, Stephanie, you'll want to as well, about the process.
Sure. Any time that you have really world-renowned architects and you have more than one, and then you have other people involved, it does become a little messy. So it was fabulous to work with all of them, and they were really great at working on the schedule. And I think the most important thing that happened with those two architects was sustainability, because that was brand new and none of us knew much about it. I can remember sitting in the trailers across the street and we had a map. And part of the deal with sustainability is finding materials for the building within a 250-mile radius. So we actually put the pin on Little Rock and we drew the 250-mile radius. That's where this limestone comes in that we see on the wall. That's Tennessee limestone. So we had to really work as a team to meet the president's goal of having a LEED building. So we all learned a lot during construction, and I think that was one of the best objectives that we had as a team, because we all had to talk and work together. So it was a great journey. I think that Appelbaum did the exhibits, and Ned, and that's Polshek, did the outside of the building. So you have to combine your ideas. And what drove that was President Clinton's vision for this building. And you can see we have lots of glass. And I can tell you that, and we'll get to NARA in a little bit, the National Archives, because glass isn't friendly to them. But President Clinton really wanted this building to have an image. So we all worked together, and I think that's what made the construction. I loved it. It was my passion. I absolutely was thrilled to be part of this project.
I'm going to go back in the White House again, what was happening. This was again in the sort of the middle of the second term. And I know Dean and Skip will remember these conversations. President and Secretary Clinton were probably more involved than potentially other former presidents and first ladies in terms of selecting the architect and selecting the exhibit designer. President Clinton had done his homework and his research, and he had looked around, and he, as Debbie just mentioned, wanted a building that was full of light. He wanted to do something that had never been done before, frankly, in building a museum. And so he looked at the work of several sort of world-renowned architects. And one of the buildings that he loved was the Rose Planetarium in New York City, which is part of the Natural History Museum. And so he admired Polshek's, how he was able to put that glass sphere in a museum complex, and sort of that design really, had him take a look at Polshek, and he did the interviewing himself. And with Ralph Applebaum, the same thing. He looked around, and obviously many world-class exhibit designers wanted to have this commission. There was a new museum in Washington, D.C. that opened in the 90s. It was the Holocaust Museum. Obviously very challenging subject matter, and to how to tell the stories. As we all know, President Clinton is a storyteller. That's how he grew up. He grew up telling stories. That was his form of entertainment, and I think that's informed the leader he is, the person he is the ability to suss out people's stories and find those connections. And I think he admired so much the way that Ralph Applebaum had taken that horrific, that story and got down and were able to pull individual stories out to tell the story of the Holocaust survivors and tell the story of what happened in our world at that time. And so that, again, inspired him to come to talk to Ralph Applebaum about how he might interpret and help him tell the story of America at the dawn of the 21st century, and pulling out the stories of how the policies of the Clinton administration affected people's lives. And so he chose Ralph Applebaum for those reasons, and we're thrilled to have been able to continue working with Ralph Applebaum. They've worked with us for the last 20 years on designing the Little Rock 9 exhibit here, featuring one of the Little Rock 9, one of the Congressional Gold Medals. Pleased to say that, as many of you know, that we announced in August that we're going to be doing a big expansion of the Clinton Center. And Ralph Applebaum and Associates will be the exhibit designer for that project, working with Jeannie Gang and Studio Gang, again, to help expand the story of what we're doing here and help us find new creative ways to reach out to young people through technology, through storytelling, and to help us tell the very exciting, dramatic, incredible story of Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton's life story through the Hillary Rodham Clinton Institute, which I'm pretty darn excited about.
It's great.
Hey,
That's
Lena,
great.
one of the things about Polshek is that I remember, I'll never forget this, we were downstairs before the building was built, and we were walking, and he said, the thing you need to remember is that your front door is going to face your city. And your city will face your front door. And I thought, that's strong.
Yeah.
Because a lot of presidential libraries were put in sentimental or remote locations. This one was put, and President Clinton was big on this, about economic development, trying to sustain, trying to build the city. He was big on tourism. And then Jim Polshek said, there's one other thing. And I said, what's that? And he said, see that interstate out there? And I said, yeah. And he said, 20, 25 years from now, that bridge across the Arkansas River may need to be replaced. Architects kind of know things like that. And he said, there will be people who will be opposed to that, and there will be people who view this as a local byway, not an interstate highway, not linking between Chicago and Dallas, not linking. And he said, if they propose, Skip, to expand that highway and build a new bridge, you be for it, you cheer for it, and you endorse it, because that's going to be your access point and key point for years and years to come. So when they made the announcement, Dean, that they were going to expand the highway, I went out and said, I'm for it. My friends on the left were not pleased, but I said, I'm for it, because I think it ensures the future of not only the Clinton Library, but what is now East Village.
And Dean, you want to add?
Well, just on the building of the library, there was, and this is an old person, where Balch Oldsmobile is or used to be, and it's still used for something during a period of time, is where everything was the repository for all the gifts and everything. And I got invited to a meeting where they had a scale model of the building, and Polchek was in there, and I don't think he fully understood Bill Clinton. And if you've ever been in the room, and Skip and Stephanie can go tell you more about that sort of thing, he has a way of looking at what he's doing, but he's thinking about 10 other things at the same time. And you really don't think he's listening to what you say. And Polchek, I think, thought he would just give this little brief summary of what he was going to do in the building and the scale model. And he'd say thank you, and they'd leave. And he got through with his presentation, and he chewed him alive. He said, why is this door here?
Why is this elevator here?
Right.
Yeah.
Why is this here? What's going on here? And he knew. He'd studied the building. He listened to everything he said. And I think from that point in time, Polchek had a new respect for what was going on.
I was just glad he chewed Polchek out instead of me.
Or me.
The second thing I'll have to tell you is a compliment to Skip. I had the habit of being down in this area a lot, and I had a French bulldog named Boris, and so every Saturday we would come up here, and Boris was the only dog that had permission to jump in the fountain when it was a fountain. But during the construction, Skip every Saturday was here. And so Skip and Boris and I would go up all the floors, and this is what we've done now, this is what. But Skip was here every Saturday, probably every day, but every Saturday, because I had another job. But every day he was here, and the three of us would go around and look at what was going on at the construction site. And Skip was dedicated to making this thing being done correctly, along with Debbie, and it was their ability to keep this project on task and on time was really great.
Hold on, one more thing, Lena. No, I was just hearing Dean talk about the Balch Olds building, and that being the first presidential materials project. I looked out of the corner of my eye and I see David Ware over here. David and Marlene both worked for the National Archives. They were at the materials project, and were part of those early days. And I think David was in that meeting you were just talking about with President Clinton, and want to give a shout out to both of them for being part of the early team that was responsible for getting this all organized before we moved into this building. So glad that you guys are here. Thank you for your contribution.
Yes. And I do want to acknowledge that questions were sent in from the audience, but they have been talking and answering a lot of those questions, and which is really good. So I just want to acknowledge that, because one of the questions was, is there a feature or a function that was left out that you want to include? And you sort of alluded to something that you're going to be doing, but if you want to expand on that, you can, or we can just go ahead.
Well, we make it sound like that President Clinton, we finally decided on the site and everything went smoothly. It was the biggest set of hurdles, and there was lawsuits, and we couldn't do.
Really?
And I mean, talking about one day that we were supposed to go to court the next morning for they were going to file an injunction so that we couldn't tear down a building, and suddenly Bruce and a group of people, the building got torn down one night in the middle of the night. There wasn't a building anymore to have an injunction about.
Thanks, Bruce Moore.
I mean, there was all sorts of things that happened like that all the time. The other person that needs to have lots of credit that never gets any credit for what we do is Tom Carpenter. Mm-hmm. And he represented the city all the way to the Supreme Court to get it done. And if it hadn't been for his expertise, we wouldn't be here today either. And Tom, no one ever says anything good about Tom or his contribution to what's going on. But he took every one of the lawsuits we had and fought them off, and we won every one of them. But there were things happening on this site before Debbie got involved in putting things up to get it flattened and get it in shape to have it done. And those are just some of the things that we all forget about, those sort of things happening, that how we got here is almost as important as the end product and sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we can't talk about how it started without talking about the opening in November of 2004. And everybody remembers so many things. We had 4 U.S. presidents here. We had first ladies. It was 30,000 people here. And it was a lot of what? Rain.
Liquid sunshine, I think, is what President Clinton said his mother would have called it.
Right. So each one of you, I want to reflect on that day, what it meant and how you felt to finally get to the opening day.
I felt exhausted. Seriously, we had spent like a year and a half planning this. I mean, this was going to be a major event. We had kings and queens and world leaders and prime ministers. And, everybody was in Little Rock, Arkansas for that day, November 18th, 20 years ago. And so the planning process for that was huge. We had, a dedicated team of people that were brought in a year in advance. We were working on every detail, every music selection, every choir that came, every musician. There was a story behind every piece of this. I think I'm going to let Skip talk about the taking down the covering over the tent. But one thing that was interesting to me is we had many, many members of Congress here, and they were holding over in the Choctaw building. That was their holding room. And all of the staff were trying to get everybody out to their seats, which was a little challenging because it was a little cold and a little rainy. And several members, including Senator Ted Kennedy, a few others that I will not name, but they decided that they were not going to come out and sit in the audience. They stayed in the Choctaw building and watched it on TV. And Bruce, they were in your office with their feet up on your desk, watching it on television in all of our offices, probably having snacks and enjoying it, watching this on TV. But no, it was a monumental day. It was a blur. It was a little disappointing to have the rain, kind of all of the wonderful detail and pageantry. And the other piece that again took a lot of planning was the luncheon that was happening afterwards, which again, lots of planning. We had the chief of protocol from the State Department helping us do the seating. Like everything was perfect, the table settings, the flowers, the tablecloths. I mean, it was going to be like a White House state event. And because of the rain, a lot of the people that were supposed to stay didn't stay. The barricades came down and just sort of everybody rushed into the tent, and it was kind of a big old picnic for whoever wanted to come.
It was. One of the things about the grand opening, and I want to give a shout out to my friend Ben Beaumont here. One of the smartest things Little Rock did in preparation for this library is they hired a young graduate from the University of Arkansas Journalism School with the sole task of promoting Little Rock on national media. Our goal was to get the front page of the New York Times travel section, the Chicago Tribune, the San Francisco Chronicle, all the major historical publications. And for a year, Ben Beaumont woke up every morning and worked day and night to make sure that Little Rock got tourism press that it had never gotten before except in 1957, and it wasn't good. But what we got in 2004 was absolutely extraordinary, and that's Ben Beaumont, and he did one heck of a job for that. That New York Times cover was really pretty cool. The day of that grand opening, yes, it was raining. And so my role was very simple, just to get up and welcome and sit down. The trouble is that when I got up to welcome, the podium or lectern or whatever we now call it in modern terminology, had a rim around it. So I get up, here's my welcome thing of 20 years ago, and I take it and I lay it on the podium and it goes underwater. And so thank goodness I had read it and knew what I was going to say, because it was completely underwater. And in the middle of that horrible rainstorm, President Clinton leaned over to me and said, "Who made this program so long?" And I said, "You did." Stephanie said later, what were you and Bill Clinton talking about there? I said, "We weren't talking." The big thing about the rain, it diminished a lot of stuff, but it didn't diminish the crowd or the enthusiasm. We had a roof on top of the stage, and it was designed to protect the presidents, and certainly President Clinton, who had just had heart surgery, and you didn't want him to catch cold or get sick in the cold rain. And I was out there talking to the media, and we were going around and getting ready to start, and I saw him taking the roof down. And I thought,
Nutso. He was our lead advance person.
And so I said, I ran over there and said, "What are y'all doing?" And they said, "We're taking the cover off." I said, "Why? It's going to pour down. It's crazy." They said, "No, we got a weather report that said during the period of the dedication that there's going to be a break in the weather and it will be perfect." I said, "Where did that weather report come from?" And they said, "Air Force One." We heard it from Air Force One. President Bush was flying in. Well, who was I to argue with Air Force One? Well, there was a break in the weather. It was the heaviest rain throughout the entire day. It could not have rained any harder. And people kept saying to me, "Why didn't you have a cover on the stage?" I said, "Blame that one on Air Force One."
Well, the Clinton Center is home to 3 separate but affiliated organizations. We have the Clinton Presidential Library, we have the Clinton Foundation, Little Rock offices, and then we have the Clinton School of Public Service. So Skip, do you want to talk about the creation of the Clinton School of Public Service and why President Clinton, why it was so important for him to have it here?
Well, the Clinton School obviously was a new model, the first Master of Public Service program in the country. It was based on the premise of leadership, building leadership through civic engagement. And I remember President Clinton saying to me, "I want it to be a school that gets something done." Gets something done. And as Vicki knows, through the field service work at the school, 3 major projects, team-based, international, and individual. Students every year, in cooperation with community partners and with faculty and staff, get something done. And you look at the work that they've done, and I'm really proud of it, and I know she is too, that when you look at the work of these students and you see everything from short-term projects like asset maps evaluations and needs assessments that are really good for that particular organization and strengthen that organization. That's getting something done. But when you look at lasting things like a Rwandan scholarship program, like a Vista program at our house, like a Ronald McDonald Suite at UAMS, like a Newport Arts Festival, like a West Memphis Community Kitchen, like wells in Tanzania, freshwater wells. There are so many ongoing, lasting programs that I think President Clinton's vision of leadership through civic engagement and getting something done, results, outcomes, I think the Clinton School's done a pretty good job at that.
Very good. Very good.
Lena, can I say, I think it's interesting, and I think everybody in this room who knows sort of Bill Clinton's life story, and Secretary Clinton's too, the ethos of President Clinton's entire life in public service is about getting things done, about helping people live better lives. And I think, obviously, he started that as governor. Clearly, you can see the thread that runs through the Clinton presidency from the first day to the last day, working as hard as we could to make people's lives better, just focused like a laser on the work, and the work of the Clinton Foundation as well focuses on that thread of bringing people together. President Clinton never saw himself as the person that was there to solve everybody's problems, but he knew how to bring diverse groups of people together to make the best decisions and then have it be action focused, being in the business of how. That's what he's done his whole life. That's what the Clinton Foundation continues to do. We're in the business of how. That's what we do through the Clinton Global Initiative. Again, bringing all kinds of people together that probably in normal life are not going to have an opportunity to interact. We do that with our Presidential Leadership Scholars Program, which I just came back from today, the first module of this nonpartisan, bipartisan leadership program where the 4 presidential centers of George H.W. Bush, George Bush, Lyndon Johnson, and Bill Clinton come together and bring this group of mid-career professionals from all sectors, all walks of life together to check our egos and check our differences at the door, but come together to focus on how we can get things done. How do we solve problems? How are we going to preserve our democracy? And I think the Clinton School has done an incredible job doing that. Jay and the library and the foundation together, we have programs for students. And it really is that thread that runs through everything is that belief in we all do better when we work together, and public service is a noble calling. And I'm so proud of the Clinton School and the Clinton Library and the foundation and what we're continuing to do here, and will hopefully live on well beyond all of us.
Very good. Dean, how did the Comparis Distinguished Lecture Series come about?
Well, my father and my mother always felt like that you had to have honest dialogue in order to get something done, and very much like what President Clinton has done. And Daddy especially always felt like that you needed to be able to talk about things and talk about issues and honestly talk about them. And so when they passed away, my brother and sister and I decided that was the legacy that we wanted to carry forward. And Skip and the foundation and Stephanie were nice enough to let us endow a lecture series. And the whole purpose of it is to have people of different viewpoints have the ability to honestly express their thoughts in a situation where discussion hopefully will take place. And that's what we've tried to do. As my wise wife always tells me, that it's not my way or your way, there's always a third way of getting something done. And that would probably be what Daddy and Mother would say the same thing, that we have to find a way to all talk together and get along together. And hopefully the series and what the 3 groups have been able to bring in, I mean, we have no part of it. We've given the money to the library and the foundation and the school, but to bring in people that will stimulate conversation and stimulate honest conversation in a setting where that can take place. And that was the wish of my parents, and that was the wish of me and my siblings, and so that's why it came about.
Sounds good.
What a great gift, Dean. We are so
Yes.
grateful for that.
Yes. So the Clinton Presidential Library, which is a part of the National Archives, and Dr. Jay Barth, who everyone's referenced a little bit here. Hello, Jay. He will be up here and he will close out the program in a few minutes, but there is a very unique partnership between the foundation and building of the library. And Debbie, you can speak to that. Why don't you talk about how it was working closely with them to build?
Again, I'll say, this was President Clinton's vision, but it also had to protect the objects in the papers. So there had to be a partnership so that when we built a building with glass, then we put another layer of glass on the outside of that glass that has frets in it that helps protect from the sunlight. So we worked through those issues because all the documents in the exhibits and the objects are here for the visitors to understand what was given to President Clinton when he was in office, and they can walk out feeling like they got a presidential experience. If we couldn't put that on display and we couldn't work together, then why would people come? So it was really important that we met the NARA specifications during our design and during our construction, and in return, they helped by giving the wonderful objects and all the papers that we see out there, because we worked as a partnership in the construction of the building.
Great. So audience, I'm going to use one of your questions to kind of close us out here. We received a very good question from the audience that is asking you to reflect on the vision for the Clinton Presidential Center. And I think it's just a great place for us to end, where you can share with us, what was President Clinton's vision? What impact did each of you hope the Clinton Center would have? And do you think the vision has been fulfilled? Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
I'll start. First of all, I do feel like President Clinton did have a vision. He had really thought about this. He thought carefully, again, as we discussed, talking about the kind of architect, the building design, the types of exhibits, the storytelling piece. I think his main goal was for people to be able to come here, and this is a library and museum, so he wanted them to come and get a real taste of what the 90s were like. What happened during that period? I think all the presidential libraries are really our country's best history museums for that slice of time. So I think he wanted people to come here and understand the context of what was happening in our country, to understand why decisions were made, to understand how it's messy, it's sausage making, but policy and process matters. And so for people to have a behind the scenes glimpse of how policies get made. So I think through the storytelling, through the exhibits, people could come here and learn about their history. Like I said, at the turn of the 21st century, learn about what was happening in our country, why the decisions were made, and get a taste of what policy making and governing is like. Public service, again, it's a noble calling, and people can come here and understand and digest that. And probably now more than ever, it's really important to see why democracy matters. It's not something we can take for granted. So the history piece, I think, is a big piece. And I think we continue to develop programs in partnership with Jay and the library and with the school to give people the tools to understand that and to care and cherish what we have here in our country. It's very unique and special. The other part, I think, is he was hoping, and I think we continue to do this, is to provide opportunities and inspirations, particularly for students. He specifically wanted to make sure that there were no barriers for schools to be able to come here. So all schools, not all the presidential libraries offer free admission for school groups, but that was something he felt very strongly about as well. He wanted students from across our state and from across the region to be able to come here and have that experience of learning about the things we just talked about. But also, as the time has gone on, we have developed these unique leadership programs. I talked a little bit, obviously, about the Clinton School, about the Presidential Scholars. We have a presidential leadership program for high school students. So again, to have real-life practical toolboxes. Vicki always talks about the toolkits you get at the Clinton School, giving students capacity and tools to understand how important and how they can participate in our democracy. So having, continuing to develop those programs, that's something we'll never be satisfied with. We will continue to elevate and to build partnerships in our community to make those types of programs possible. And finally, I think as we talked about, we are going to be doing an expansion here, and we want to increase our capacity to offer things for our community, to offer things for people of all ages to come here and to really learn about civic engagement and democracy and why our democracy matters and why everyone needs to play a role. And again, I want to give a shout out to Jay. His arrival here and his dedication and focus to the concept of civic engagement is really incredible, and we're pleased to continue to work with his leadership in bringing more of those types of opportunities to the public. So stay tuned. Lots more to come. There will always be more to come.
And Stephanie, I will say you're talking about some powerful things that are offered to our community that are provided for free, but there is a cost to that. Yes. And so
let me say too, thank you for reminding me, Lena, that none of this would be possible. This was not a free building. This was a $180 million project. And many of you here in this room continue to support the foundation in our work, and we're part of the group that helped us raise the funds to do this. Obviously, we are an operating foundation. We don't give out grants. We seek funds to be able to do this work. And I think what this expansion is going to mean to our community and to the students and to the future generations is going to be huge. And so we will have more to say about that and plans to share, and I hope you'll all consider continuing to support the work here. But I want to say a special shout out and a thank you to our Clinton Center donors and our supporters, because without your support, all the things that we're talking about up here would not be possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, and I agree with everything you said. And speaking after you is a lost leader. You're so eloquent in what you say. The three of us could have sat down and you could have spoken for an hour and it would have been good. But
it's very nice.
History is something that we need to learn so we don't repeat it. And if you don't have the opportunity to learn history, you're going to repeat it. But to me, what is the important part of everything that's been done is the Clinton School. And what Skip started and what Vicki's going to keep moving forward on, it's the lifeblood of what's going to happen here. It's the legacy of what's going to happen here. It's Bill Clinton's legacy. It's Hillary Clinton's legacy. Because the young people that leave here with the instructions that Skip started and David Pryor, I guess, started really.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, forgot about Tom. That started that. That's what's going to make a difference. When people leave here and say, I'm a Clinton scholar or I'm a Clinton graduate, that's what is going to make a difference in the world. And that's what, to me, is what we have to put our emphasis on, because if you're not teaching young people how to serve and giving them the opportunity to serve, then they're not going to do it. Because it's people of our generation, you're young, but people of Skip's of my generation, it's easier than the people today that don't do it or don't have the opportunity to do it. And to me, that's what the living part of the Clinton legacy is going to be, and it's the school. So thank you, Skip.
Well,
thank you, Vicki.
No, thank you. There's a lot of people. When we were doing this project, and you've heard the vision that others have shared, which I agree with, I was focused on 4 major pillars. There's so much you could do. You could really get involved in the design of the building. You could really get involved in the exhibits. There's so many areas where you could get involved. So I had a focus and I woke every day thinking these 4 things. Number 1 was academics. How are we going to build a school? How are we going to get high school kids here, elementary school kids? How are we going to let architecture classes come through and take a look at this building? So I spent a lot of time thinking, how do we build the academic part of this? The second thing was archival, Jay, was because while archives sometimes, a lot of people don't relate to documents and historical data, over time, and the definitive biography of Bill Clinton has not been written. It will be written long after we're gone. And all of this will be part of the history. But that definitive biographer will be spending, or biographers will be spending countless days and time in this collection. And it was important not only to have this collection, but it was important to have the Butler Center down the street, to be able to walk down the street where his gubernatorial papers are and where other collections related to Clinton are. The third thing, and I think it's, remember, when you talk about a library, it's not just this physical building. It's what it's done and will continue to do for the economic development of this city and this state. $3 billion several years ago was the impact analysis. It's probably much higher now. But I really wanted this to be part of a city, not a single source destination. And then tourism, it changed the face of Arkansas tourism. It changed the face. We never had anything like it. Thank you, Ben Beaumont. It changed the face of Arkansas tourism. And I think it will continue, the addition, to do that. So those 4 pillars, 20 years later, do I look back, with a little pride? Yeah. Academics? Yeah. I think you can say this school is getting better and better and better, and kids are coming here from all ages. Archival, we've got a fabulous collection that is growing. Economic development is expanding. We can't let the river market crater. And you've got tourism, which now you have the Museum of Fine Arts. You've got Little Rock Central National Historic Site. Thank you, Bill Clinton and Dale Bumpers. There is just so much going on as a result of those 4 pillars that 20 years later, I could say, yeah, it was okay.
I'm going to be really short because I agree with all of this. I just want us to remember a small little word called hope.
Yeah.
And that's what I think his vision, and I think that's what we need to walk away with.
I love it. So we're going to end. Jay's going to come up here, and I just want to acknowledge 2 people. 3 is my favorite number. So,
Dean gives
oh,
his
did you
vision.
say something?
But
Okay.
Dean, you need to talk about,
So-
let's give this band here a lot of credit for a lot of the stuff that's happening down here in downtown. Dean has had a vision, whether it's the
art.
sculpture garden, whether it is the park out here, but there's some super exciting things that are happening in our city for the future, Dean, and you're leading the way in a lot of it. So I'm putting you on the spot to talk about, this has been a catalyst for a lot of things, but talk about some of the great things that you're leading here with your partners at the city and other partners here in this room to get done for the future.
Thank you. It's been, as we all said, a great ride to doing this. And this has simulated lots of different things that have happened. And if you talk about the Bill Clark wetlands or the Cindy Miller Bridge and the island, or you talk about the sculpture garden, or you talk about the playgrounds that Margaret Clark has put in, all of these things happened because of this building. And if it hadn't been for all of those, this building being here and what Bobby Roberts did with the library, and he deserves a lot of credit for taking the phones building and making it into a really functional, wonderful building, the opportunity to do these things wouldn't be here. So now we have, because of what Skip was talking about, the new interstate, we have 19 acres that we're figuring out what to do with. The Jeannie Gang and her group are trying to figure out what we do to bring ourselves more to the river. We're talking about how to, for the first time, to truly get Little Rock and Arkansans to the river. I mean, we built, if it hadn't been for Sharon Priest, we wouldn't have Riverfront Park, which if you were going to design a park, no one would ever do it. It's long, thin, and narrow. I mean, it is a very unusual park. We don't remember that up until the time we opened the river market, there was a functioning railroad that ran right through here and went across that bridge, those 2 bridges. I mean, we built every barrier you could imagine to make sure the city didn't get to the river. And we're tearing all those things down. And I'm very hopeful that we have more and more opportunities downtown because of this. But it's because in Little Rock, we don't have one person that says, I'm going to give you a bunch of money. And there's nothing bad about that. If you have that opportunity, that's
Call
great.
me if you have that.
Right.
Just call me.
But the nice thing about Little Rock is everybody chips in. So you talk about a Margaret Clark who says, I'm going to help build his playground. You talk about the Clark family who helped build the Bill Clark wetlands. You talk about all the people who helped honor Cindy Miller with the sculpture and the Cindy Miller Bridge. You talk about Beth Colson helping to get money to do the bridge. Everybody does a little bit in Little Rock, and then you wake up and it's there. And so someone may say, I did something. I've never done anything. There's been a whole group of people. Now, I asked.
That's not true.
That's not true.
That is
Yeah.
absolutely not true.
You got to have a captain, dude.
That is
and
not
you're the
true.
captain.
Well-
You continue to be the captain of a lot of this.
But it's the ability, as Debbie said, of having hope that things are going to happen, and everybody willing to contribute a little bit. And that's what Little Rock to me is all about. That's what gives me hope for Little Rock, that everybody wants to make it a better place. You wouldn't be here today if you weren't here, if you didn't believe that. People watching on the screen wouldn't. And I continue to believe that if we all pitch in together, we can continue to make this a greater place to live. And so I've been fun to be part of it, and I'm just a small part of it because everybody contributes to doing it. So thank you.
we all
Very
do better
good.
when we work together.
Together. Thank you. Quickly, while Jay's coming up, I also want to thank two people, Joy and Ben, for pulling this all together. And there will be a series, yes. There's more to come. All right, Jay.
Well, thank you all. This was a great evening of remembering and learning and laughing. And I want to thank all four of y'all, Debbie, Skip, Stephanie, and Dean. Thank you all for not just this evening, but thanks for your leadership that has transformed the city and also has connected this deeply, historically provincial state with the rest of the nation, the rest of the world, every day as we walk out and see people from all over the place who are here visiting the library. And thank you, Lena, for your commitment and for your work tonight, keeping this crew in order. So thank you, Lena. So thank you all. Over this year leading up to November, which is the 20th anniversary, there are going to be a whole series of programs that are really dedicated to thinking about the past, the present, and the future of the Clinton Presidential Center. And so look forward to a whole series of events, and we look forward to seeing y'all here at the Presidential Center. Speaking of the present, I want to invite you, if you haven't already done so, to check out our current temporary exhibit, Be Our Guest, which focuses on diplomatic visits during the Clinton administration and really focuses on the politics, the style, the entertainment of those visits. And it's a great temporary exhibit, and I encourage you to check that out. And also, we're going to have, of course, a series of programs tied to that temporary exhibit, starting next week. Next Thursday, we have a temporary program on the first state visit, which happened during the U.S. Grant administration. And it will be, the first state visitor was the king of what was then the Kingdom of Hawaii. And so I urge you to come. We have friends coming over from the U.S. Grant Presidential Library to talk about that visit and share some of the moments of that visit. So it's just one of the things that's going to be happening this spring while that exhibit is up. We are so glad that y'all are here tonight. We wish you safe travels, and please come back to the Clinton Presidential Center. Thank y'all.